Mhm. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Be starting in a few minutes. Not quite 8:30 yet. Here we go. All right, guys, we'll be starting in about 2 minutes. So, as far as some housekeeping updates are concerned, recently on social media, I mentioned that Training Tuesdays for Mythic Mission will be live. Okay. And so on Facebook and or Instagram, if you follow me on either or both of those uh, social media sources, you will find that I mentioned that those will be live from now on. On Facebook in particular, you're going to find that there is a like an event that you can, you know, join or say that you're interested in going to. Just because I didn't want to limit myself with exploring some of the, really important information about discipline for the body and the mind. And it's hard to create reels, that are really short and powerful, at least for me. I'm going to try to extend those a little bit. And that's why I'm kind of making it a live thing. So I think those are going to be streaming through Facebook, and Mythic Mondays will be still kind of bite-sized chunks. Those at least I've been able to whittle down to some real type things. Those will still be showing up on both Instagram and Facebook on Mondays. And Marvel Wednesdays will, similarly to Training Tuesdays, be done in this format because it's the end of my teaching week. And Thursdays and Fridays, I've got office hours and planning time. And because I build everything from scratch for my curriculums, I'm planning for the next week and such. So it's a great opportunity for me to kind of tie up the week. And why not? It will be streaming live on our YouTube channel because for the tabletop apologetics branch of Mythic Mission, it's now the dedicated home to that is YouTube. Thought it was appropriate to stream from YouTube. So we'll be doing that. And you'll have access to those recorded live sessions on Wednesdays for Marvel Wednesdays, on my YouTube page. So you can access those if you happen to miss the actual live stream. And so I want to welcome you to the second Mythic Mission Marvel Wednesday. Last week, I talked a little bit about the importance of wonder. and what wonder was, or is, excuse me, and why it matters. And I talked a little bit about what we would be doing on Marvel Wednesdays in the future, and I talked a little bit about the Fantasy Flight living card game product, Marvel Champions, which you can see here. Now, none of this is paid promotion stuff. This is all stuff I've bought with our own hard earned cash. But I do want to give some shout outs and some credit where credit is due. First and foremost, to Fantasy Flight Games for making a fantastic tabletop game for individuals and families. And in addition to the Marvel Champions game, the Lord of the Rings living card game will be making an appearance. Those of you know, with my book that I wrote on Tolkien, that's going to be especially fun when we do some more of those. But the other thing that's really important to keep in mind about, sorry, there I got a little bit distracted. Forgive me. So the other shout out I want to give is what I'm playing with right there. That's what it is. Do not forget. Don't forget. Don't forget. I guess I'm getting to that age where I need this, right? So don't forget. So this is a token, and as one of many tokens that I've got here in this tray that are from Buy the Same Token, BUY Buy, and they're based out of the UK. They make excellent hero boards and tokens. Look at these awesome Iceman tokens for his signature ability, Frostbite. So just want to give a shout out to them. I love their products. I've been buying for them for a couple years. I've been playing Marvel Champions since it came out in 2019, right around the time of the pandemic. And we talked a little bit about that last week, so I won't say any more. But this week, for today's session, I'm going to be doing a playthrough of a game, what a typical game would look like for a solo player. Now, I'll explain that Marvel Champions, the living card games are different from like Pokemon or Magic. Although I shouldn't really say Magic because I don't have much experience with it. But with Pokemon, it's a collectible card game, right? So you don't know when you're ripping packs what you're going to get. With the Lord of the Rings living card game and Marvel Champions, you're going to get, you know what you're going to get. So if you buy the base core game for Marvel Champions, everyone's core game is going to be the same. If you buy any of the campaign expansions or hero packs, everybody's going to get the same thing. And so there's no randomness involved in it. And I like that because it's customizable and endlessly customizable. One of the things that constantly evokes a sense of wonder for me, as I'll talk about today, is the endless customization and the awe that it evokes in my life, and how it also has a soothing, kind of calming effect when I play the game. So I really love that. So the living card game format, living refers to, the fact that it's not collectible, that it's ongoing, and you get what you know what you're getting. In other words, collectible card games obviously are those that you don't know what you're going to get when you rip out a pack. So, what Marvel Champions is a game where you can become one of your favorite Marvel heroes, fight a villain from the Marvel universe, and try to thwart his main scheme, his master plan, and try to prevent him and his minions from, overwhelming you. And it is a game that you can play solo, similar to Solitaire. And what I'll be doing tonight is playing what's called two-handed. So as one person, I'll be playing as if I'm two. And one of the interesting parts about doing that is that it's not true solo, right? It's not just you representing one character. It allows you to experience sort of the fun and customization of the game in a broader way, right? When you play just one hero, you don't really get a lot of experience with different decks that you can build, and so it's more fun in my mind. It does give a little bit more challenge the more characters or players you have in the game. more challenging the villain is and the scenario. That is the main scheme that he's trying to place threat on. We'll talk about that as we go. But playing two-handed is not too bad. Okay, so for example, tonight's villain is Magog, and for those of you that have watched the X-Men '97 show, um, I haven't finished it actually. I'm almost done with it, but I don't know if he features in the actual show itself, but I will say that Mojo does, and Mojo is in one of the early episodes, and this guy is like the championship fighter who fights in Mojo's Coliseum. And in this scenario, so that's a villain card, you are fighting him continually, right? As if you are in a Coliseum. And so the point of this scenario is not so much to thwart and get rid of his plot, that is the scheme on his plot, but so much as to defeat him over and over again until you get enough crowd ratings to woo the crowd and therefore defeat him by popular opinion. Okay, that's a little bit different than the traditional scenario where the point is really good guy versus bad guy. Good guy knocks out bad guy, or bad guy knocks out good guy. Now, Marvel Champion players know we can still lose either by getting, threaded out, or by elimination, right? By getting our hit points taken out. But in this case, that's really the only term of loss for this scenario is if we lose all of our hit points. If the main scheme, which is represented by this scenario card here, which usually has different stages. So 1A is like the setup for the game. When you flip to 1B, sometimes there's 2 or 3 or even more parts of the scenario. But in this case, you don't get out schemed. What happens is you just go back to fighting him again, but he gets some perks that help him be more powerful. So again, Marvel Champions is a solo game or a cooperative game you can play. I'll be playing two-handed solo tonight with Bobby Drake, also known as Iceman, and Remy LeBeau, who is, of course, Gambit, who recently appeared in the X-Men. I'm sorry. Well, it is X-Men sort of themed, but the Deadpool Wolverine movie. And, most of you probably will know who Iceman is. So I'll be playing as these two characters. Got my decks, my player deck for Iceman here, and off out of sight is my Gambit player deck. So just a little bit about the game. Basically, you can build a deck of 40 to 50 cards. You really kind of get like anywhere from 25 to 35. I'm sorry, 25. Yeah, about 25 to 35 cards that you can build from various aspects, which I'll talk about in a second, that get added to the actual hero's unique player cards. And you build a deck, you draw cards and you play cards and you try to defeat the villain or satisfy the requirements of the scenario. Okay. The aspects, there are now 5. You have leadership, protection, justice, aggression, and pool, or named after Deadpool. Okay. And I won't explain that last one because it's a bit esoteric and kind of devoted to, Deadpool's character arc and recent developments in the game. Leadership is kind of all about playing ally cards and controlling the board with allies. Protection is all about, like it sounds, taking damage and, giving it back. Justice is about getting the villain's threat, represented by these little yellow tokens, off his main scheme so that he doesn't out threat us and win the game by having so much threat on his scheme and fulfilling his plot. Aggression is all about, like it sounds, going after the main bad guy and his minions, which he can draw from his encounter deck over here, which this is the villain's main deck. And that's it. So, have these different aspects. So leadership is blue, protection is green, aggression is red, justice is yellow. So my Iceman deck tonight is aggression. My Gambit deck is justice. And I won't really go into elaborating too much because this is meant to be kind of an introductory video just to kind of familiarize you with how the game is played. But the advantages depend on that is advantages of playing a certain aspect depend on the character that you're playing. So, for example, Gambit here, you can see every hero has 3 numbers. Okay, you have the blue, which is THW, that's thwart. His ability to remove those yellow numbers that I just showed you from the main scheme of the villain. His attack value is 2. His defense value is 3, which is really good. So he can protect himself, but he's only got 9 hit points and a hand size of 5, which is actually the hand size is pretty common. The hit points are very low. So with him, one way you could play him is by augmenting his, least number here, which is the 1 thwart. And so by plugging him in with a lot of justice cards, you can compensate for his lack of thwarting ability. That's how I've chosen to play Gambit tonight, but he's really good in protection and other aspects. So there's just endless customization. There's the word for any of these characters, but there's different advantages to playing every hero in, different aspects. So that's kind of fun. That's one of the appeals of the game. It's very soothing to build different decks and to kind of see how the characters gel with different cards. And so that's really fun. With Iceman, he's a little bit different. He's got similarly 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense, but he's got an upgrade card called Ice Slide in his deck, which you can see he's on the art here, that gives him +1 to all of those aspects. But if he changes back to his alter ego side, he loses that. It goes back into his deck, and so you have to pull it from your player turn. So he becomes a 2/3/3 hero pretty quickly. So that's really good. But again, there's just a lot of different things you can do with every character. It really depends on a lot of different factors for what you want to do with each character. And so for me, I'm trying to look at various aspects of how each character plays, and I build an aspect, aggression, leadership, justice, protection based on that. So that's, again, I'm not going to really go delve into the details of that tonight because that's getting a little off topic. So I've rambled on long enough. I want to go through a game. And while I do tonight, I'd like to talk about a couple of different things that I think are really relevant to what we're trying to do here in Mythic Mission Tabletop Apologetics. So obviously, besides fostering philosophical, theological, and aesthetic conversations, and let's not forget, this is a very artistic game, and so aesthetics does come into it. But besides hosting these kinds of conversations about the things that really matter, I'm trying to find an intersection with popular culture and things like Marvel and Lord of the Rings, in which we can kind of connect ultimate issues with what's called cultural artifacts. These are things that appear in our culture that are shared values. Okay. And so, of course, we all have sort of a common cultural love of Marvel as a license. And so that's what is meant by a cultural artifact, something that is well known by the general public and appreciated by the general public for the most part. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So for tonight, aside from showing you a brief walkthrough, it may not be brief, and we're going to kind of just go on until I either lose or until I win. We'll see how long that takes. Marvel Champions games can, even in solo, take a very long time or a very short time, depending on the luck of the draw, which, like in all card games, it's based on what cards you draw as a player and what cards the villain draws, which you are drawing for him, but he's kind of like the computer simulation. So we'll just see how that goes. But the most important thing I want to talk about tonight, and where I want to start, is where we left off last week about Wonder. Now, as I have posted before on social media about this in anticipation of tonight's event, we have Ross Inman's book on Wonder, Christian philosophy, that I recommended. And there's also a book on superheroes and philosophy, which is edited by Tom and Matt Morris. It's called Superheroes and Philosophy, Truth, Justice, and the Socratic Way. Ross D. Inman's book is called Christian Philosophy as a Way of Life, An Invitation to Wonder. And I'm pulling from two of these books tonight to build on what we talked about last week, to show you the scientific and psychological benefits of wonder and how Marvel Champions, as an example of a cultural artifact, can help us reap the benefits of wonder and have fun while doing it. So, we're going to kind of learn a little bit about that and also talk a little bit about heroes and what a hero is and what we can learn from them and why I think there's an appeal. So for throughout tonight's show, I'll talk a lot of bit about why I love this, and I've already started rambling a little bit about this and that thing that I love about Marvel Champions, like deck building and experimentation. So I'll be sharing that consistently throughout tonight and how that intersects with the material I'm sharing. So just as a review from last week, and then I'll kind of introduce the game and take a break. We'll go off and on kind of talking academic stuff and Marvel Champion stuff. Last week, I talked about how Inman speaks in his book about wonder as a distinctively human response because it is a intellectual, moral, and aesthetic response to reality. Right. For those of you that don't know, aesthetic is a word, not ascetic, that refers to like a monk or a nun. Aesthetic refers to the philosophical contemplation of beauty, what is beautiful, what is not. And so wonder is one of our distinct human responses to reality. And we talked about two key components of wonder, according to one leading scientific proposal. And those two things are perceived vastness and a need for accommodations, that both are essential to experiences of wonder. And we spoke about both of these last week. So I'll refer you to last week's episode. What I'd like to focus on tonight is some new stuff. The psychological benefit of wonder. There's several. Okay. And I'm also joined by my wife, Sarah, who you may not be able to hear because I've got this microphone over here and she's across the table, but we'll see if we can get her over here to say hello. She's going to be assisting with the playthrough tonight. So, the most studied psychological benefit of wonder is what researchers call the small self effect. According to a leading scientific proposal on the psychological benefits of wonder, regular experiences of wonder tend to make us feel small, both in a physical sense, like standing before the Pacific Ocean or the Grand Canyon, and in the sense of being less concerned with our own selves and more concerned with the world around us, including the interests of others. So that's one benefit of wonder. The second benefit of wonder, closely related to the small self effect and to viewing wonder as self transcendent emotion, is that the regular experience of wonder can help us cultivate humility, which is so needed. Regular experiences of wonder can guard against the temptation to think that we are masters and possessors of nature, and that our primary posture towards God's creation is one of control and manipulation rather than the appreciation and acceptance that we should have. Wonder, in other words, can help us put us more in touch with our existential limits. Now, I do realize that many of you may not be believers, you may not be Christians, or you may belong to another religious organization. And what I, of course, want to invite, of course, is open conversation and discussion about this. And really what it comes down to is whether we believe wonder, like any other kind of process in the mind, is something that's really there, or is it just a process, of biochemistry? And if we can really reduce thinking and experiencing wonder to biochemistry, then really it doesn't have any significance beyond itself. And so what I'm really interested in is the bigger picture here, in that this really points to something that is actually there, and there's a reason we have it beyond just the physical event of wonder in the mind or the brain, as I know some might argue. And I don't want to get into the mind body problem tonight, but I think it's important that we recognize, and especially on this channel, that I'm here to foster open discussion about different points of view. But I do know one thing for sure, that all of us agree that wonder is a wonderful, truly wonderful, that's where the word comes from, a wonderful experience, is that It helps us to stay in awe of things. And I'm going to get to something that psychologists call awe elicitors in a second. And let's go there right now. So psychologists have identified several types of stimuli that are most likely to evoke wonder. These are called AWE elicitors. Most significant and frequent awe elicitors are those that tend to be information rich. Certainly, Marvel Champions is an example of that. There's a there's a lot going on. You have to know the difference between an interrupt and a response, and you have to read the card, and then you have to resolve one effect and then another, and you have to know the order in which it all goes. And it's kind of like a puzzle when we do Sudoku or Rubik's Cube or any other kind of puzzle, like a Celtic knot, whatever you like, there's a satisfaction to trying to figure out how it works. So, of course, Inman says here that these information rich examples have examples in the natural world, music, art, and spiritual and religious experiences. The stimuli that tend to typically evoke wonder more than others, precisely because of their inherent vastness and complexity. So I would argue that this is not just a game to play, and there's an entertainment factor, but it can be a contemplative opportunity to to have discourse with people over a table about the intellectual satisfaction that one gets from building a deck and seeing everything kind of come together, and you draw the right cards and there's a flow. I talked in Training Tuesday this week about how flow helps reduce anxiety and helps redirect our thoughts away from our anxious thoughts. And so everything we've been talking about lately kind of comes together. And so it's a really wonderful thing. And I do think that this is an example of art. There's obviously an aesthetic factor to these cards and the cited artists on each of these cards. Every single one of them, it bears proof of that. Okay, I'm going to take a break now to play the game a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit about heroes and why they matter. So I've been kind of looking forward to this here. Let me get started. At the bottom of every hero card, it says what their hand size is. And in the case of Iceman, I draw 6 cards. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not a really great hand for me. What you can do at this time is what we call mulligan. So I'm going to mulligan, and that means they go in my discard pile. And then I have to keep my second hand. So that's 4, 5, and 6. Now that's what I'm talking about. So I'll give you an example here. There's 2 really fantastic cards that every player of Iceman wants to have drawn in their first draw. And that is this Power Belt Cryokinetic Perception. So not only does this give us card draw, but it allows us to ready if we draw an ice card from his deck. This is a resource generator. It also gives him 3 extra hit points. So at the bottom of every hero card, not only do you have a hand size, but it tells you what your hit points are. I've got that represented by little dials over here for Gambit and Iceman. Gambit's got 9, Iceman's got 11. You've got event cards, which do attack or remove threat. You've got, upgrade cards, which I just explained. And then these little tokens here from Buy the Same Token that I referred to earlier. Great company that makes these. These are specific tokens for Iceman. One of his abilities, when he attacks or defends, he gets to give a copy of Frostbite, which basically reduces the enemy's ability to do stuff until he's done with his activation. So if he's attacking you for 2 damage, he now does 1 damage, right? If he's scheming because you're in alter ego mode, you're just a regular dude floating in the pool, he's only got 1 scheme, so he can't put any threat on the main scheme, which is kind of nice. The other tokens here refer to some of his cards. So anyway, that's what we've got for Iceman. Let's go over to Gambit. He's got a similar hand size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, we got 1 good card there, and I might be tempted to just keep this hand because we've got Gambit Staff. So this is an upgrade. hero interrupt. An interrupt means that this takes place before anything else does, right? So before the enemy deals me damage, I do damage to him, and then he deals me damage. If it was a response, it would be after the hero or the villain does damage. This says whenever an enemy attacks, exhaust this card, which you do by turning sideways, you deal 1 damage back to the villain. And then I got a bunch of other useful cards. So I'm going to just keep this because I don't want to get rid of this because I don't want to have to fish for it later. So similar to Iceman's tokens, one of Gambit's fun hero abilities is to place charge counters on when he's in hero mode, right? Every hero has an alter ego. That's their sort of street name. And then their alias or their hero name, Gambit. So you can put a charge counter here on his card once per, it says once per round. So a round is a player phase and a villain phase that represents 1 round. And then that's 1 round. And then you start over again. So I can't put 1 token on him in the player phase and then flip it for 2 during the villain phase. That would be against the rules. So what this does is it allows him to play attack cards, and you can remove these counters to do more damage. So it's kind of fun. Gambit's all about doing damage, but I'm not really tapping a lot into that with his Justice build because we want to be able to get rid of some thwart as well. Okay, so we play a turn. We start with the player phase. Okay, now because I'm playing 2-handed, that means I'm kind of pretending that I'm 2 people. So I'm going to just start as I'm player 1. Okay, typically there's like a first player token that gets passed around, but in this case, we're not going to do that. All right. Now, I really want to play these 2 cards, but I only have, well, I can do this. I can actually play. So in the upper left-hand corner, it says 2 and 2, right? That means that I've got to spend 2 cards, or at least some cards have more than one of these little resource icons here. So I'm going to spend 2 and 2 to play both of these and put them into play, which is really going to help me out in the long game. Now, I've lost a lot of good cards there, but I think players will agree these are infinitely better. So you just kind of find room for him here. So now Iceman's got 14 hit points instead of 11, and he can exhaust this power belt to generate a resource for an ice card. And then after I attack or defend with Iceman, this other card allows me to draw 1 card. And if I draw an ice card, I can ready. So this is really, it's a good flow to have. It's nice. These are the right kinds of cards you want to have at the outset of a game. Okay, so now I'm set up. So do I have other cards to play? No. But do I need them? Not really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exhaust my hero player to do 2 damage to the Magog enemy here. He's got 20 hit points. So I'm going to just whirl that down to 18. That's that little dial for him. And that also gives me the ability to put a Frostbite token on him. So now he only has 1 attack and he can't scheme. So if I was an alter ego, he can't put any threat on the main scheme, which is nice. All right. So now I'm pretty much done, except with this card, I can, after you resolve your freeze ability, which is on Iceman's card, I can exhaust this card. And you do this to show that you've used it. I draw a card. It's not an ice card, so I can't ready Iceman, but I do have a resource card to play later. Now with Gambit, it's kind of the same process, right? Now I have 3. You can have 3 of the same card in every deck. I have 3 upside the heads, and I love those cards, but I'm going to get rid of 1, and I'm going to play Gambit's staff, which gives me a little bit of damage to do. I don't really need to play. Well, I could play this. So I'm going to put 1 charge counter on Gambit. I can do that once per turn. I can do 2 attack. I'm going to exhaust. He now has, instead of 20 hit points, he has 16. We've done 4 damage to him. So now I can play another upside the head. I'm going to pay for it with the Overwatch card. This says after your hero makes a basic attack and damages an enemy, you can confuse that enemy. So that means if a character is in alter ego, the villain can't scheme for one turn, which is kind of nice. I'm going to go ahead and find a little confused token to put that there. And there you go. All right. So get rid of that card. And now it's really the end of my turn. I can't really do anything else at this time. So at the end of the player phase, you ready all of your cards, including your hero. Now, one thing you can do, and I learned this a little too late in Marvel Champions, is you can discard, like let's say I had 4 cards. I don't like these cards. I can discard all of my cards if they're crap, and then I draw up to my hand size. But I'm going to keep this because it's a resource card. He has a hand size of 5. So I'm going to draw 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, and one more I can't count. There we go. Those are pretty good cards. All right, so I'm going to keep those. Same thing for Gambit. I'm going to keep those. I'm going to draw 1, 2. Woo! About to make a name for myself. These are good cards. So I've got these. Okay. So I'm going to keep them. Here, this is my hand. And because I'm not playing as a protection aspect, there's really not a whole lot I can do during the villain phase, which is now about to start. So the scenario tells us that every turn, let me show you this. Every turn gets 2 threat per player. Okay. So that means now I put 2 and 4. So now there's a total of 6 because the lower number down there shows us what we start with. 2 threat per player is how we started the game. Now, normally, if I get to the threshold of, in this case, 12, which is 6 per player, then that means I would lose the game. But this has a special resolution. We can talk about that later. So I'm already halfway to the limit, which is usually not a good thing. And neither of my heroes are good thwarters. So that's additionally bad. But we're okay because I know that this is a safe scenario for that kind of thing. Okay. So now what we do is this. After placing threat on the main scheme, the villain attacks each character one at a time. He gets a little boost card. Okay. So before I reveal the boost card, which kind of ups his attack and such, I have to decide whether I want to defend before looking at that. So I'm going to decide to defend for 2. It means I can prevent 2 damage. He does 2 attack, but he has now 2 frostbites because Iceman's interrupt ability puts the frostbite on there before he attacks. So now he has 0 attack and 0. He can't do anything basically, but he got a boost card that gives him 3 boosts. So he now goes up to 3 attack, which sucks. So that means he does 1 damage to me, 3 minus 2. But his special card over here says that when he does damage to you, you put 1 rating on his card. So the crowd is cheering for him, and that sucks. You then remove 1 frostbite token, not both, right? Because they stack. So you remove 1 at a time. I could be wrong about that. That is one thing I've been wondering recently in the Marvel Champions community. Do both frostbites get removed? And I wouldn't think so. So I'm going to play it that way, but who knows? All right. There are lots of little rules that as we go and this game grows after 5 years, you just don't know what's going to happen. So I'm still learning. All right. So now Gambit is going to either defend or take the damage. So now Magog only does 1 attack because he's got a frostbite on there. I'm going to just go ahead and decide to defend for 3 because I got a really nasty boost card last time. Oh, that's a good card to get rid of. This card brings in the nemesis of the hero into the encounter deck, which makes it even nastier. It also has 2 boost icons. So now he's got 1 attack plus 2. So now he also does 3, but he has 3 defense. It does no damage. Now, when an enemy attacks, I can exhaust this and do 1 damage to him. So I'm going to do that. So now he's down to 15 hit points. The frostbite goes off of Magog because after the villain activates, it goes away. And now you'll notice that both my heroes are exhausted by the end, almost the end of the villain phase. And that's kind of problematic because unless they can ready, they can't do any of their basic powers of thwarting or attacking in the next phase, which really sucks. So the last part of the villain phase is you draw one encounter card. Now that can be modified depending on other cards that are in play per player, and you resolve them one at a time. This is caught off guard. It says when revealed, discard an upgrade or support. Crap. That you control. If no cards were discarded, this card gains surge, which means you draw another card. That means I have to discard one of these. I'm going to discard Cryokinetic Perception. That really sucks. See? And then for Gambit, we have a minion, Corvus Glaive. He has Retaliate 1 and Toughness, which means he gets a free hit, right, where he doesn't take any damage, unless I have what's called Piercing, which goes through that. In this case, too, he's a nasty villain. Or a minion. He's got 2 scheme, 2 attack. Retaliate 1 means that when I attack him, he does 1 damage back to me. So that sucks also. That's the end of the villain phase. That's 1 round. 1 player phase, 1 villain phase, 1 round. Now, you would think that I would ready my characters, but you don't, right? You do that at the end of the player phase. Now, I can still play certain cards, but I cannot exhaust my character to use thwart or attack. I can flip once per round to alter ego. I'm not saying I'm going to do that. I'm just telling you that we can, right? I didn't do that. You all didn't see that. So I'm going to put marked, which is a upgrade for 0 cost that says you attach to a minion, and attached minion gets overkill, which means that if I do more damage than his hit points, let's say I do 6 damage to him, he's got 4 hit points. 2 damage gets done to the villain, so the spillover gets done to him. But he's got a tough status card. So unless I can get rid of this with piercing, he gets a free hit where that gets discarded and no damage is done to him. So that sucks. I can't attack with Iceman, and therefore I can't attach Frostbite to anybody. So I could use Arctic Attack. You deal 4 damage to an enemy and attach a set-aside copy of Frostbite to it. I could do that, but the problem is it would be a waste because it would just get rid of his card. So I'm instead going to play Resource for 2 and these 2 to play Ice Wall. And Ice Wall is a fantastic card because it says when any identity takes any amount of damage from an enemy attack, place that damage here instead. It absorbs 8 damage, right? And then after whoever dealt the 8th damage or beyond to that gets a copy of Frostbite attached to them. So that's nice. So that's a good thing. We're going to keep that. That's now going to absorb a lot of damage. Now, Iceman can't do jack at all. So we're just going to keep him there. Although, I just realized I could have exhausted this to play that. So I'm going to pull back out one of my cards out of the discard pile. So because that generates a resource for an ice card. So now I have 1 card still in my hand. I'm going to add a counter to Gambit. Now he's got 2. And gosh, this kind of sucks. So I can use Charge Card. And if I remove both counters, it gains Piercing, which means not only does it remove Tough, but it does damage to him. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend a resource. I'm going to now play Charge Card. It says attack, deal 4 damage to an enemy. For this attack of Gambit's throw to card ability, removed at least 2 counters. It also gains Piercing. So this means that Gambit gets +2 attack. So it does 6 damage, right? Because it does a 4 initial. I remove 2 counters and it gains Piercing. So that actually gets rid of our nasty guy, and it does 2 damage to the villain, which is nice because it does overkill. All right. So there we go. We've got a nice resolution of that minion there, and now I don't have anything else to do. So I'm going to probably flip Gambit to Alter Ego because he has some really useful abilities when he is his Remy Lebeau. And I'm going to keep Iceman icy, baby. So we're going to ready our characters and ready any cards we used. And I'm going to draw up to my hand size 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And those cards suck, but that's okay. And then I get to draw 3 because Gambit has, Remy has a 6 card hand size. So now he's got some pretty decent cards. He's got a card that he can use in Alter Ego here called Creole Charmer, which is nice. We'll kind of explain Alter Ego in a minute, how that works. But we've got to resolve the villain phase now. So first things first, the villain now has 2, 4, 6, 8 threat on the scheme, meaning 4 more and it gets resolved. Ordinarily, you would lose the game, but that's not how it works in this scenario. Right. The next thing is the villain attacks or schemes each person. So the villain attacks when you're in hero mode. So for the case of Iceman, the nice thing is I'm just not going to defend because I've got Ice Wall up, right? So we're going to draw a boost card. It has no boost icons. He does 2 damage. I'm going to put 2. He gets 8 there on Ice Wall. Now, the villain is confused and he doesn't have any abilities preventing his confusion. So I'm going to remove that token. He does not scheme, meaning no additional threat gets placed on the scheme. Placed on the scenario or, the main scheme, which is great because when you're in Alter Ego mode, the villain schemes rather than attacks. And in most scenarios, when he schemes and there's a threshold and you don't want to get to that threshold, of course, then what happens is you lose the game. So this actually works out. So I'm going to stay there. So that means now we proceed to the last part of the encounter phase. The last part of the villain phase, which is the encounter phase. I drew a minion that has quick strike, which means she attacks right away for 2. And I had 13, so now I have 11. After she attacks and damages a character, damn it, he gets stunned. So that means one of these little tokens, meaning he cannot attack with one of his basic attack. Well, that sucks. So you'd have to exhaust to just get rid of that. So that's lame. Second encounter card is Stage Fright. You are confused. Son of a gun. Touche, Magog. Okay. So now I'm confused. It's ironic. This card has Gambit and Rogue on it. Let's get that into focus. Place 2 threat on the main scheme. Place 4 threat if there are more ratings on the challengers, and there are not. So I get to put 2 more threat on the main scheme, which sucks. And now that means 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I'm just going to put a 10 here. Get rid of all these 2s. Ay, caramba. All right, so now it's my turn again. So that was another round, right? Second round is done. So now I have choices, right? I have a minion to get rid of, but I can't attack with Iceman's basic attack because he has a stun token. So what shall I do? I'm going to play Colossus, okay? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to discard 2 cards to play team building exercise. Exhaust this card. It says play a card from your hand that shares a trait with your hero, X-Men or Ice. You can reduce it by 1. So what's great is Colossus has the description, reduce the cost to play him by 1 if you have the mutant or X-Men trait. But I also have this. So instead of costing 4, he now costs 2. But I still can't play him. So psych. Crap. So I'm going to just get rid of the stun token by exhausting. And I'm going to flip to Alter Ego. And what this says is after you change to this form, shuffle 1 ice card from your discard pile into your deck for each copy of Frostbite in play. There are no copies of Frostbite in play. So I just have to sit here and sit in my pool and chillax, which sucks. All right. So Remove 3 threat from a scheme. If this, well, I wonder, can I do this if I'm confused? I think I can because I'm not. That's another great question, right? This is an alter ego action ability, and I'm an alter ego, but I'm not using um, thwart. So I wonder if I can use this card. That's a great question. I don't know. I'm going to say yes, but I don't think that that's necessarily the right answer. But I'm going to discard 2 cards and play Creole Charmer. It says remove 3 threat from a scheme. So I'm going to do that. I got 2 and 5, that's 7. And then it says if it removes the last threat, you confuse the villain. It didn't. So that lame. Now his alter ego ability is you can exhaust him and look at the top 2 cards of the encounter deck, discard one of those cards, remove threat from a scheme equal to the number of boost icons. Heck, might as well do that, right? So we'll just draw these 2 cards. They both have 2 boost icons. So I'm going to just discard this one, and it removes 2 additional threat, which is nice. Okay. So that was a crappy round. Not a very exciting round. So let's take a break here before we start the villain phase again. And let me get in a little bit more teaching here, and then we can proceed, play another round or two, see where we end up. So why I love this game is you get to embody a hero, right? And so when we think of the Greek term for hero, and it is a Greek word, ero, it means a man of superhuman qualities favored by the gods. The Greek heroes were all after arete, which is excellence, right? They were looking for excellence in Homer's time in the 8th century, maybe 9th century BC. They were looking for excellence in battle, and that changed based on the time in ancient Greece. An illustrious warrior or a man admired for achievements and noble qualities are other definitions in the Oxford English Dictionary for hero. Okay. I was trying to track this down, but I remember in my research over the years, and I've done so much, and I thought it was in one of my Karen Armstrong books, but I believe that the etymology of the word hero had something to do with the springtime, which referred to how in most times in ancient Greece, and I'll have to cross-check this, that they were cut down in youth, right? And in fact, in Homer's Iliad, one of the heroes that's cut down in battle is described as a young sapling that's cut before, he's really had a chance to grow. And so a hero is synonymous with springtime and with youth. And they, at least in ancient Homeric Greece, they were here one minute and gone the next. Today, we think of Spider-Man. We think of Remy LeBeau. We think of Gambit. We think of Iceman. We think of Wolverine. We think of Miles Morales, Spider-Man, right? Who's featured in a lot of animated films these days. Or we think of Superman, if you're going to go venture into DC. The concept of hero is what philosophers call a normative concept. It doesn't just characterize what is, it offers us a glimpse of what ought to be. And heroes have a claim on us, right? It presents us with something to aspire in our own lives. We look at a lot of people, even within our families, as heroes. But superheroes like the X-Men and those in the Spider-Verse, right, provide great fictionally vivid images of the heroic. They're aspirational, or that is, we aim to be like them, and they're inspirational, right? When they are developed properly and portrayed well, they present us with something to which we should aspire. Now, I will say, what use is a fictional character? We might think it has no application to our lives. Well, the term fictional in philosophy would refer to true with regards to the myth, right? So within the mythical world or story of Spider-Man, things are true, right? So that things are fictional or true within that world. But what we often find is that these things that we see in these stories are not just true within their world, but also true within ours. And the best myths break through the mythical wall into our world and offer compelling lessons for everyday life. And that's why we flock to these myths. That's why we love these kinds of games, because they allow us to feel like we're throwing up an ice wall to protect our friends. And it allows us to, for a minute, feel like we're more powerful than ourselves. And I kind of alluded to this too on Training Tuesday, that when I'm boxing, right, there's a sense of empowerment, that I'm strong, that I'm confident, that I can accomplish something that, not everybody does. And it involves the exertion of physical strength. And so we think of Spider-Man lifting up a car. So these are kind of ways in which the fictional and real crisscross. And so I think we flock to things like this because we see something in these heroes that we love, uh, something in the way we want to be. And they show us that nothing worth doing is easy. Okay. And that's why we love them. But I also think that there's also tons of therapeutic effects of playing card games, just like playing chess, mentally stimulating, helps us get into a flow and relieve stress. And of course, it just gives us this sense of inspiration that we can also do great things. Though we can't throw up ice walls or do, extraordinary things like shoot adamantium claws through our knuckles like Wolverine. They still represent um, their fictional symbols that help us to understand things that we can do in our real life. Okay. And they empower us. And so it's not necessary that they be literally real, right? That we have to translate it into the real world in order to get any value out of them. We can simply delight in the fact that they point to something we can actually do. And so in this case, to be Gambit, he's got some cards in his deck called Natural Agility, for someone who is a runner or someone who is especially agile, right? Playing this character, you kind of see yourself in the character, jumping around and dodging things and being able to be very nimble, like so many athletes are. You might come over to a friend's house and play as Gambit because you see yourself in that character. And while it's not literally doing the same thing as he's doing, because he's this fictional mutant who can charge cards and jump off walls, you can approximate that somehow, right? And that you see yourself in that character. And so there is something about role playing, about agreeing to the rules of a game and suspending disbelief and being able to say, okay, I agree to these terms and I can really learn something by doing so, that we love, right? And then we take those lessons of strategy and role playing from the game and apply them in real life. And so I want to leave us with, at least with this part, before I finish another round or so, with some Seneca quotes. Seneca was a great Stoic philosopher in ancient Rome. And if I'm not mistaken, Seneca was the tutor of the Emperor Nero, who reigned from 54 to 68 AD, if I'm not mistaken, right after the Emperor Claudius, and then right before the year of the four emperors in the year 69. Seneca obviously wasn't able to get through to poor Nero. Do pity the man if you know anything about him. But Seneca was a fantastic Stoic philosopher. He says this: choose for yourself a moral hero whose life, conversation, and expressive face all please you. Then picture him to yourself at all times as your protector, as your ethical pattern. We all need someone whose example can regulate our characters. I love this too. He says, cherish some man of great character and keep him always in mind. Then live as if he were watching you and order all your actions as if he saw them. Confucius in the 6th century BC in China said something very similar. Behave as though you are in the presence of an important guest. And for Christians, we know that God in Jesus Christ and through the Holy Spirit is always watching. And we want to perform and behave in a way as if he were watching. Even though we cannot physically observe that, we know that not all things that are real are physically observable. And so we know that he is. It's a different kind of observation, but we are inspired and encouraged, hopefully, by the fact that God is beside us and watching us, and we should order all of our actions as if he saw them like an ordinary person would see with their physical eyes. So I think there's some insight here for Christians to take away. And I think, of course, as Christians have often pointed to the church fathers and plundering the Egyptians, meaning to follow the commandments of the Bible, and realizing that God has scattered fragments of the complete truth in Christ across all cultures. We can always glean some insights of truth from foreign cultures and different worldviews. So this is an example where we can use our biblical worldview to confirm a truth we find in Roman philosophy. So that's what I have insofar as educational insights for tonight. I want to finish one more round, and then we can see where we are at that point. So at this time, we now got to add some more threat to the scheme. I've got to draw up to my hand size as Iceman and Gambit. So I've got 6 cards there. And we're going to have another 3 over here. Okay. We're getting somewhere, hopefully. So now let's see here. Again, what's kind of nice, I just realized too, is that this ice wall affects Gambit as well. But he's not in hero form right now, so that's okay. So now we have to also resolve the minion. So he does 2, 2, that's 4. So now there's a total of 6 on there. And now Supergiant is going to do another 2. So that now it says, if there's at least 8 damage here, discard this card and set a set-aside copy of Frostbite on that character who attacked. So Ice Wall's gone. But hey, that did a pretty good job absorbing a couple of phases, right, of damage. So now what's nice, Gambit. Oh, crap. Well, Gambit is confused, but Magog is not. So this is going to hurt. So that's going to be a scheme of 4 total. So that's 5, 7, 7, and 4 is 11. Crap. So that's not very good. Now we have the encounter phase. Land out of time. If the Savage Land is in play, resolve its special ability and take 1 indirect damage. But otherwise, find Savage Land. So this is an example of where a card says, if a card is in play, do this. And if it's not, you got to look through the encounter deck to find it. So this is going to suck. There's a giant T-Rex on that card for anybody who's interested. This is going to suck because I hate this card. Let's find it. There it is, Savage Land. So the villain gains retaliate 1. Yay. And we're going to shuffle that. So that's permanent. Well, that's not so nice. And then this is a minion patrol, which I believe, I'm trying to remember, patrol and one of the other keywords means that you can't remove threat from a scheme or attack the villain. So that means we got to defeat him before we do anything to the villain. So we'll just, off the top of my head, I can't remember which one is which. The defeating fire. Oh man, oof, that's gonna hurt. Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. So now it's our turn. one great thing, and I just realized too. Hold on. Bobby was in hero mode or alter ego, so I don't think I resolved that correct, but that's okay. You know what? This doesn't have to be perfect tonight. This was an excuse to talk about some important stuff, so I'm gonna just let that one fly. But I all the little details, right? So you almost like need two brains to play this game sometimes, especially when you're doing it in two-handed. So I'm going to exhaust team building exercise. I'm going to flip to hero mode. That means this card now only costs 2 instead of 3. And so I'm going to get rid of these 2 cards. That means now the villain cannot activate the next turn, which is kind of nice. So that's good. And then he gets a copy of Frostbite when he does. I'm also going to play Chill Out. I'm going to give him a copy of Frostbite. So we start stacking, and we're going to resolve. We're going to remove 3 threat from a scheme. But now we've got to attack. And I just keep realizing I can do this. So there we go. Hold on. I'm going to just keep one of these cards. I keep forgetting about the power belt. Once again, things to keep in mind. So let's do 2 attack to this dude. Copy of Frostbite to him. Now it's Gambit's turn. We'll flip. We'll put a counter. We will also play Lay Down the Law, which means I can remove 3 threat from a scheme. So I'm going to do that because I changed form. And I am going to play Breaking and Entering, which removes another 3 threat from the scheme. So that's nice. And then I'm going to mess him up with an attack of 2. No, I'm gonna do this guy in. There we go. So the defeating player finds escaped mutant and attaches it to their identity. That's not nice. So we've got eventually one of these cards in here. Let's see, where is it? Well, I apparently am missing a card, I guess. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It says, I know I put it in here. There it is. Okay. Escape Mutant. We'll shuffle the encounter deck. Oh, man. Okay. We'll deal with that in time. That's a lot of detail there. But you guys can see how the flow of the game works at this point. On and on it goes. And, depending on what kinds of cards you draw, things can go south in very quick amount of time. Clearly, too, there are a lot of details to keep track of. And while I have not exemplified the perfect game, we've kind of demonstrated the flow of how one phase leads to the next and how one round resolves. And I think that is kind of what I set out to do tonight. And so what I think will make this more fun in the future is to have folks come on and play with me when we're, not parenting full time and in the middle of the week. So maybe we'll do some weekend games. Sarah and I can play, and I've got some people who have expressed interest in wanting to play. So that'll be nice. I hope you all enjoyed some of the insight I shared tonight. And I know it's not for everybody, but I really pray that it has reached some folks and that maybe this is something you can look at in your own spare time when you have some. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Mythic Missions Marvel Wednesdays. So I think we'll just end the stream here. And Next time, we'll maybe play through another game with some different heroes, a different scenario, and carry on our conversation about wonder and the importance of heroes in our lives. So we'll see you next time on the mission. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.